So again, you're playing the situation out. There's nothing that's scripted that says it's always this way or no way. Be willing to adjust as a hunter, whatever the situation calls for.
Hey, fellow elk fanatics, if you're completely obsessed with elk hunting like me, then join me every Wednesday for tips, tactics, and stories on elk hunting, from elk hunting legends to fellow DIYers. This is the Rich Outdoors Wapiti Wednesday. Today's Wapiti Wednesday brought to you by Phelps Game Calls. Phelps Game Calls are the best diaphragms out there. Even if you've tried to use diaphragm calls in the past, but you couldn't, give some Phelps amp frames a try, and I promise you they're the easiest calls to learn on. Hands down. Also, the new unrivaled bugle tube is out and it's available. The new tube is much smaller than the old tube. The new tube packs a punch. It's got great volume, great tone for its compact size. In fact, it's only 4.5 ounces and 17 and a half inches long. It's ideal for you guys that are packing in and don't need a full-size bat taking up all that room. Actually, I'm going to plan on rocking this tube for the first half of season when I'm packing in Montana. And can't wait. It's for a little tube, it works awesome. It sounds great. You can get it at phelpsgamecalls.com. Head over there, fill up your cart with all kinds of pretty colors of diaphragms. Enter the code TRO and you'll get free shipping on your entire order. Today's podcast brought to you by Elk 101's University of Elk Hunting. The University of Elk Hunting is the most in-depth course on elk hunting you can find, and it's all online. Corey Jacobson, 10-time world champion elk caller, has put together the most in-depth, organized breakdown of how to be a successful elk hunter. In addition to not only getting full access for an entire year to the University of Elk Hunting, you also get the app. So you can have all of the course knowledge at the palm of your hand, and it works without service. So when you're out in the woods, can't figure out what happened, you can refer to your University of Elk Hunting app, and it's right there. It's like having hundreds and hundreds of podcasts all organized and structured into one place that you can refer back to and study up on. I highly, highly recommend you invest in your knowledge and your skills. It will pay off tenfold in the long run. Whether you're just getting started in elk hunting or you've been elk hunting for years, I guarantee you will pull information from this course. It is such a wealth of information. Sign up today, use the code TRO30, and you'll save 30% off your membership, which is good for the entire year. Go sign up. I promise it's worth it. Alrighty, Paul, welcome to Wapiti Wednesday. I'm pumped to have you on. It's been a while. Last year we did a podcast in August, and man, I think you blew people's minds with the wealth of knowledge that's up in your head. So I can't wait to dive into this again. I got all kinds of questions for you, so it should be a good time. How you been, man?
Hey, I've been doing good, and thanks a bunch for asking me to come on back.
So I guess we did chat in December, which was post last season. We chatted a little bit more. But are you getting excited for elk season yet?
Yeah, it's a kind of a year-round thing. It's not like it's the last 6 weeks and I start thinking about it. No, it's something that is on my mind 24/7, and I bet you're the same way.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, I guess we can start off here. And for those who don't know, I guess tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your background if nobody's heard the previous episodes.
Okay, well, with the amount of people that heard it, boy, that'd be odd, huh? But, just the same, my name's Paul Medel. I have Elk Nut Outdoors. We started it almost 20 years ago now. It's, I believe, 19, 20 years ago. And my main passion in life is to understand elk vocalization and everything that is goes along with it, their behavior. It's not just sounds, but it's the messages that they're sending with each sound. And that's what I kind of dived into many, many years ago. Actually, it's been over 30 years ago I did that. And so it's kind of come to the fore where a lot of folks, that hunt elk every year, they have questions. about some of the situations and the encounters they've been in, and some of the vocalizations they've heard, and if it was possible that I could help break it down for them to help them understand an encounter better, so they would know how to deal with them in the future. But basically, this is what we've all been about over here at Elk Nut Outdoors, is trying to break down bulls and cow sounds and the emotion that goes along with them that actually sends the message that they're trying to get across.
Yeah, and in the previous episodes we've talked a lot about not only what the sounds are, but how much or how important the inflection and the I guess the message behind it. What's happening? Is that bull excited? Is he not excited? Is he curious? Is he, aloof? Is he just trying to tell you to go away? We talked about a lot of that stuff, so I can't wait to dive into it. I know for probably most people out there, we've all been in those situations where we did it textbook call strategy, what we thought would work, and it just didn't work. And we're like, what the heck? You're looking at yourself, like looking at your calls, like, what did I just say that made that elk run away? And so it's super fun to talk to you and kind of just wrap your head around maybe some of the problems that we're having, or not only just what to say, but when to say it and things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, because really the age-old problem with calling elk, it's, there's nothing really new about it. It's not like we're trying to reinvent the wheel. I think there's so many people out there these days that they want to be successful today. They don't want to go through the process like you and I have for so many years and try to eliminate as many trials and errors as we can, so we can focus on the pros and not the cons. And it comes with experience. I could sit here and talk all day, and if an individual has never set foot in the elk woods, he doesn't know what he's missing, or to maybe put those little pieces of the puzzle together, because you can learn a lot through podcasts. You can learn a lot through DVDs and one's experience. But are you getting the complete picture? And that's what's going to help you to be consistently successful year after year. And it's interesting, because I had a guy contact me here lately, and he was telling me that he's a newer hunter and that he's just going to get out there. And so I asked him what his strategy was, and he says, well, I'm going to challenge every elk I come across. And I said, well, why would you do that? What would be your reasoning behind it? And he says, because this is what I've seen on the internet and a lot of the videos on YouTube. They just said challenge everything, and finally you'll have one that will cooperate. And this is true. I've seen the same thing over and over. But this is starting to be the mindset of a lot of people, and a lot of failure has come from it, and not just from last year, but previous years. And a lot of times people just don't get it. Me, I'm the guy that says I want to call every elk in. I'm not happy with using a one-dimensional challenge type bugle for every elk and then hoping one will play. Think about it. When you do something like that, you're going to call in maybe one or two, if you're lucky, out of 10, and sometimes even more bulls than that. Now, if you have a 5, 7, 8 day hunt, it's not unusual to have 2 or 3 very quiet days. Nothing's going on. And so you've almost lost time right there. And then if you get a bull a day for the next 5 or 6 days, where's your 1 or 2 and 10 or 11 or whatever it takes? My point is that you've cut your odds for success way down when you're trying to use a one-dimensional sequence for every single elk because that's what you were told, or that's all that you know. Mm-hmm. But if you start understanding what you're hearing out there, it will all of a sudden turn around if you will apply some of these calling tactics to where you're calling 8 and 9 out of 10 bulls in. And this is what we do every year. This is not unusual. And we're talking over-the-counter, public land, do-it-yourself bulls. We're not talking draw hunts where there's only 10 hunters out there. We're talking about thousands of hunters. And so you can actually turn the tables and actually experience success this year without a question of a doubt by just applying some of the common sense principles that make elk tick.
Yeah, no, and I 100% agree. And a lot of times you see people that, some of us are fortunate to be able to spend almost the entire month out in the woods, and a lot of people aren't. And so sometimes you see tactics from people where it would take 15 days for that to be a successful tactic. And granted, it could happen the first day and things like that. But when you talk about time efficiency of elk season, challenging every bull, especially if the week you get off is the 5th through the 10th, or what, maybe it's the 3rd through the 10th, and that's your 7 days to hunt for the entire year. Walking up and challenging every bull is probably not going to work. And it's, if you get into areas that are a lot of pressure, that's probably not going to work as well. And like you said, you may find that you challenge bulls and they just shut up and they don't want anything to do with it. Maybe you're in a high pressure area. So there's so many things that go into it. And that's one of the things I think you and I get along really well, because I kind of came at this the same way. I used to challenge every bull, and it was kind of like, if a bull didn't want to challenge back, then it probably wasn't worth chasing. And I'd just run all over the mountain and do that. And I got really interested in this being able to kill any bull that I wanted to. And being able to call in every bull. And I think that's what's fun to me, is just being able to call in a bull. Even if I'm not going to shoot it, man, I love calling in elk. So to me, like, being able to call in 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 bulls that I come across, that's fun. And it's the game. Like, I know it's not a one trick pony. It's like the go in and challenge bugle, and that works a lot of times, but I love being able to sweet talk a bull in, or knowing whether to challenge, or whether to sweet talk, or whether to cow call even, and all these things that go into it. So you're the guy to talk to, because when it comes down to it, like the behavioral aspects, so you're spot on. A lot of it is common sense when you really dive into it. It makes sense. You're like, oh yeah, that's why he barked at me, or that's why he didn't want to come in, and things like that. So I don't know. It's that's the fascinating part about elk hunting, and I think that's what a lot of people love about elk hunting, is just the calling aspect.
Yeah, it's the challenge of it. It doesn't mean you can't tree stand hunt them, around water sources or heavily used trails or saddles where, they cross. There's a lot of ways to approach your elk hunt, depending on the time of September you're going to hunt it. But calling is a huge, it plays a big role. It's just huge. And the reason I say things like this is because how many bulls we call in from the 1st to the 31st, and you can do it every single day of the month. And the elk do not have to be bugling. They don't have to be rutting. The cows don't all have to be in estrus. Those are fun times. Don't get me wrong. Those are the most awesome times, when you're out there and they're vocalizing on their own and bugling, just screaming, and they're answering everything. But, you look at the success stats, and we know that an over-the-counter hunt is well under 10% as an average. It can run from 5 to 10%. And there's reasons for that, because people are trying to apply the only tactics they know, regardless of the date. They're trying to apply the same tactic regardless of the type of bugle they hear. If you're going to hunt early, you're going to hear a lot of lazy, lethargic bugles. That's what you're going to hear. That is a very killable bull. I'm going to call that bull in 99% of the time. And that's no kidding you. I will call that bull in. And so can anybody else. But they have to apply the sounds to that individual, not carry it over to the next bull they hear 3 days later, because his testosterone level may be rising and his interests are a little different. He has more emotion behind it. So what you're looking for, here's what I'm doing. I'm going to go out there September 1st, okay? Let's just say I hear a bull bugle on his own. All right, here's how I evaluate it. A bull is bugling through emotion. A cow calls with emotion. How much emotion? A bull will have what you would call a social type of a bugle, which is a non-intimidation, more like a locator bugle. Okay, now if a bull starts getting frustrated because he knows there's elk around and he's calling and he's getting no response, he will raise the tone, or more emotion comes out of his bugle now. So now he went from social to a little bit of frustration because he's not receiving satisfying responses, to where now he could even go to where he's now being upset, unhappy, and his emotion changes even a little bit more stronger. Now this bull could get over to the point where now he's just getting totally pissed off, and he's now on full tilt. And this bull is one where he's actually maybe making challenges type sounds or lip balls. So what I'm trying to do here is, when you try to teach people and share with them what's going on in the elk world, it's hard to say, oh, put this much emotion or put that much emotion. No, it's easier to say, here is a sound that you can understand. In other words, we start using location bugle, we use roundup bugle, we use challenges, we use lip ball. So those sounds are representing the amount of emotion that a bull is applying to a sound. This is how I'm evaluating. So if I hear a bull give a location to lethargic bed bugle, and he's just feeling lazy, it's hot, and he's kind of giving you that That's about all you hear. And he may give one or two of those, maybe, sometimes just one, early morning. Maybe it's still a little dark. Maybe it's right after daylight. But that bull is a dead bull. That bull is toast. But what happens is, what if you said, okay, I'm going to challenge every bull. And you went and you started challenging this bull at 150, 200 yards. You're just screaming. You're doing everything. What is he going to do? Is that bull going to now respond back and come saying, I want to come in and accept this challenge? You know, ask anybody that's tried it with that type of a bugle. And the odds are like 99.9%. He either shuts up or he moves off. So it's a negative result. No matter what, it's a very negative result. It very, very rare does that play into a positive. And so you have to have a bull in the right frame of mind if you are going to be defensive. In other words, challenging is a very defensive action on a hunter's part. It's the same with the bull. If I walk through the woods and get a bugle and this bull challenges me back, you see, it tells me what his mindset is. I already know I can get real aggressive with this bull. He gave me almost everything he had. He's trying to keep me away. So it tells me he's got cows and they're hot. His has at least one hot one. But when you go to a bull that is cold and you start applying everything you got, right then and there, you're in trouble. You want to kill that bull? You slow play that bull. That is exactly how you're going to get that bull to eventually come in. So you can't get impatient with it, though. Realizing that this bull's bugle was not an upset bugle or frustrated or ticked off, realizing he was more in the social, in the sound that he emitted. That's where he is. That's how you have to play him. And once you start understanding what to do next and how to play that bull, that's when you'll start pulling one in and the next one and the next one and the next one. I'm not saying, you're never going to bump any, because things happen. Even if you pulled in 6 bulls in a row, it doesn't mean he gives you a clear shot. It doesn't mean the wind holds up. It doesn't mean your setup was always perfect and he didn't stop at 60 yards. There's always those little things. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to at least give yourself a fighting chance out there to be able to get some eyes on every elk that you're calling. And again, you can do that. And the key to calling in these bulls that are not being aggressive is to slow play the bull. If you will slow play every bull because you're unsure, you will have a chance at killing that bull. Because when you slow play a bull, you can always elevate the calling. But when you start out at the top, it's hard to be believable, and you start downplaying it. Now you're coming down the ladder. It doesn't make sense. And the elk know this. We're talking especially over-the-counter elk that are hunted. So to be able to throw that at them and then realize you need to back off because it isn't working, you've already screwed up. You're done. That elk is not coming in. You really have. So you have to start down at his level, and you have to create that interest from him or that curiosity from him. And once you do, you'll finally get him to creep. He'll start coming your way. He's not going to be fast about it. So when people get it in their mind and they realize that this encounter is going to take anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes before I'm going to call him in, they're okay with that once they realize this is what's going to take place. It's like throwing a mouth reed in your mouth and never using one and wanting quick results in 5 minutes. I want to be able to cow call, bugle. I want to do everything. And they realize they can't. So if someone told them, this is going to take you a couple of weeks, 10 minutes a day for a couple of weeks to learn, now you have that in your head. You know what to expect. This is what calling elk is like in that situation. So you already know you're going to have a little bit of time spent there in that setup.
No, absolutely. And one of the things that we've talked about in a previous episode was just the timing of everything. And, we made the analogy that when you walk into the bank, there's like a pace and a structure, and you notice things. But if something was out of pace and everybody was hurrying, you would notice instantly. And elk are no different. They're in their realm, and they understand the pace of flow and what things are normal. And, and sometimes during the rut, a bull can come out of nowhere and be screaming his head off. Last week in August, first week of September, probably not the case. Things are going to be at a different pace. And so not rushing that pace, because as soon as you make something that's outside of the norm, outside of what they're used to, then all of a sudden the red flags go up, and now he's on high alert. And instead of, maybe that bull is going to come in anyway, but now maybe he's going to try to circle dead quiet and get the wind first, because something doesn't feel right to him. This is just not how this normally pans out. And whereas it's very common for bulls to lazy bugle, and there's another bull on the same ridge, and they're kind of feeling each other out. It's that time of year, like, you know, and my buddy James Nash made a great analogy the other day on the podcast that, you know, elk bulls are no different in a lot of ways to cow bulls, like moo cows. You know, you put a bunch of bulls in a field, and they all kind of have their relative area, their domain within the field. And as long as that doesn't get disturbed, it's not a big issue. All the bulls will be fine with each other, and you know, they kind of all have their area. And you know, elk are very similar, where they'll be on the mountain and they kind of all have their area, and it's not time to fight each other to the death. But once you start pressuring those areas, they still have to stand up for their dominance. And so like what you're talking about, in that bull lazy bugles from a bench on the side of a hill, if another bull is moving into that area just to see what he's about, what's going on, then that bull's going to have to come investigate. And it's not necessarily a challenge, but that's what happens in early season. They're trying to size each other up. They're trying to feel out the territory. They're getting a feel for what's going on. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Like, that system is going to get played out very slowly in real life, right?
Yeah. Now, you know, if you were to do that now, that's what a new elk would do in an area, is he would advertise himself. So, and it's common for bulls to do this. And of course, the real bull out there won't know who you are. He doesn't recognize you. He knows you're a newcomer into the area. And yes, that can provoke a physical appearance. And it's going to take time. He's not going to just come running out. And generally speaking, yes, there are kamikaze bulls out there, but they're very few and far in between. Yeah. And they seem to die off pretty quick. You know, if they're going to shout out just that fast and come running in, you know, with throwing caution to the wind. Yeah. And it's great to have a bull like that now and then, but you could go years and never come across one. So this isn't something that you can expect. And so the advertising.
What's your slow play? Just kind of finish that scenario for folks. Like, what is your play? What's your strategy? I mean, we're talking September 1st, and I'd kind of like to walk through. Let's back up a touch and walk through what a typical day for you looks like early season. It's hot. It's 90 degrees. Bulls aren't really talking in the middle of the day. Like, what do you do for a hunt? Like, what's your entire day look like? And then let's kind of work into like how you go about slow playing that bull that just lazy bugles from his bed.
Okay, first of all, let's understand that this can be any time in September. You know, we know as it gets to the 10th forward that cows are more likely to come in estrus in abundance, because anywhere from the 10th through the 25th is when this happens. But also within that time frame of any time in September, a hunter can experience, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 days of just pure quietness, maybe not in a row, but somewhere in between there. And then other days they'll hear a few bugles here and there, but nothing majestic, no rutting. And so this is what I'm paying attention to, whether it's September the 1st or any date. I'm listening for that bugle, whether they respond because of my location bugle or if I hear them call on their own. I'm listening to that bugle. What is the emotion behind it? Are they yelling at me? Are they yelling at something? Are they talking more in that social tone? Are they kind of in between where the voice is raised but not yelling? This is what I'm looking for. This is exactly how I key in on how am I going to play that bull and create interest so that he wants to come over to me. Because very rare does it happen that a bull bugles enough on his own over and over and over and over that I can just slip in silently and put an arrow in him. I mean, and when that happens, wonderful. But in most cases, they don't. They're quiet enough and only give so few bugles that you can't get a perfect destination. So what I need to do is I need to get in there close enough, and close enough for me on a bull that won't bugle very often is around 150, 175 yards. That's all you need to be. You don't need to be on top of this guy. You're not challenging him yet. And that is a key point. I'm going to slow play this bull, and by the time I'm done, that bull is usually going to come charging in, or he's going to be screaming his head off, because I am setting him up. He just doesn't know it, but I'm setting him up for what he really wants. Every bull, when they start rubbing their velvet off, their testosterone levels are taking over, and that's why they're rubbing their velvet off. They're ready to breed right then. This is in August. So when nothing is happening coming the 31st of August, September 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, yeah, there's some few spots where cows are coming in, but the majority are not. So with hunters out there, a lot more hunters than elk in places, they're not hearing these challenging, screaming 5 bulls going at each other where you can go in and put a sequence together and call one of the satellites in. Or if you want to target the herd bull, that's a whole nother subject that you're going to target him only. And so it's the specific sounds you use. But when you get those lazy bugles, how lazy is it? And that's what I'm looking at. And most of the time they're those lazy, lethargic bugles. And so what I'm going to do, I can tell you right now, by the time it's said and done, I'm going to convince that bull I have a hot cow with me. That's what I'm doing. That is the ultimate goal in my mind. So I have to think, okay, I have 15, 20, 25 minutes here. I'm going to convince that bull I have a hot cow. I know he doesn't have one. And so why is he going to want to come over to me? Because I do. And so there are times you can play the advertising sequence. You could use cold calling setups. You see, and the reason I go to this is because it promotes an appearance generally by branch antlered animals. If I go into a cold calling sequence, someone may say they're listening to this and say, well, Paul, why aren't you just doing a lot of cow calling? All bulls want cows. Yeah, but they're not dumb. They are already around other elk there. When you hear a lethargic bugle out there, remember one thing. These elk are herd animals. They're not the only one there. You can better believe that within earshot of them is other elk. But all we do is get this tunnel vision sometime and think it's just that bull. He's by himself. There's nothing else around. No way. There are other elk somewhere over there, and he knows right where they're at. And there's no bugling going on, hardly nothing, which shows you there's no hot cow. So I can't run in there and just say, I have a hot cow. You know what I mean? It doesn't work like that. You have to play the game. And so when I get in there, I already know I'm going to slow play this bull. I will definitely announce myself a little bit, nothing big. I may just let him know I'm over there, and I'm going to go ahead and go through my scenario to convince him I have a hot cow. Now I'm going to mix things up. The sounds I'm going to use, here is what I'm going to eventually use here. I am going to use raking, which is a sound. I'm going to use a little bit of light foot stomping. I am going to go ahead and use a glunk. I'm going to use a pant, and I'm going to do a lot of moans, bull moans, and that's just, and you can do them with your voice. You're just kind of giving it that, and all you're doing, you have to remember one thing when you're doing this. This is slow play. I am talking to a cow that is with me. I am not talking to that bull. So let your sounds represent that. Let the emotion that you're carrying out, let everything know that it's within that little realm. It's you and her. And I don't like being a bull with 4 cows. I'm a one bull, 1 cow party right here. That's all I need to be.
Paul, I'm going to interrupt you for a second and say, if you guys don't have Paul's app, the Elk Nut app, go download hit pause right now, go download the Elk Nut app, and you can check out all of these sounds and what they mean and all this. So as we're talking about this throughout the podcast, you can, and you can reference that as a note-taking device or whatever you want and look at the bull sounds. How do we get the app if we want to hit pause right now, Paul? Just because I feel like it would be very helpful to a lot of people to be able to just look and see what you're talking about as we're going through this.
Yeah, and I can even give the sounds here too.
Perfect.
No, just so they can have it all right there in front of them now. But the app, the app is amazing. It will have the glunking on it. It'll have pants on it. It will give the challenge bugle, some of the cow sounds, everything that's necessary to prove to this bull that you have a hot cow there. But all they have to do is go to, if you have an iPhone, just go straight to the App Store. And from there, you're going to see a search function. Hit search and type in Elk Nut. The app will come up right there. It will allow you to purchase it right there. If you have Google Play, in other words, an Android and a Google Play, then that's what you're going to do. You're going to go to your Google Play, and in your search function, you would just put in their word or name, Elk Nut, and up it'll come, and it'll actually give you a little review there of what's it about, and you can watch a free video clip of what the app entails and why it would be important to have it. But anyway, so yeah, the app has a lot of info.
It'll be good for everyone to have basically this in front of them and say, hey, this is, what the sounds we're talking about. But go ahead, continue. You're calling, basically you're trying to convince them.
And the scenarios are in there.
Yeah, perfect. This is elaborate version.
I was just going to say, even these scenarios are in there. A lot more.
Perfect. So you find your bull, he's lazy bugle from bed. You're going to move in right now. You're kind of, 175, 200 yards away. And you're basically convincing this bull that you have a hot cow, but you're only talking to the cow. So you're basically trying to impress a cow that's imaginary.
Yeah, and you have to understand that a lot of the country that we're hunting, even when we're hunting other states, we're hunting a lot of dark timber here. We're not hunting sagebrush openings where I can see a mile out there,
Yeah.
and I expect an elk to come through these large openings. No, I have a setup. I'm in this timber, and a lot of it is just so rough and rugged that there's no way to make a silent stalk on this bull, even if you knew exactly where he was. There's so much underbrush and downfall and willows growing. It's everywhere. And so a lot of times you need to get the bull to come to you. And I do find that when you can put the bull on the defense, in other words, he makes the final move, your odds just escalate right out the roof. If you have to make the final move and get into him, it's really a touch and go thing, but you can do it. There are times when it will work. But in the situations where you're trying to bring elk over to you with a setup, the sounds I'm going to go through is I like to let the bull know that there are other elk in that area. And usually I'll just give him that little low lethargic bugle. I can do it with my voice because I know he's only 150, 175 yards. He's going to hear me easily. I can do it with my bugle. If I decided to do it with my bugle, here was the sound. I would use something like this. That's about it. He just needs to know there's a bull down there. That's it. He can't even size that bull up to say how big or how small he is. He hears an elk sound. And so I just stay right there. And I usually let a few more minutes go by and I don't do anything. If he wants to respond, fine. But if he doesn't, and most of the time they say nothing at all, I just planted that seed. And usually after a couple of minutes, I will do that again. And the reason I do that is to let him know I didn't move. I'm still right there. I did not encroach on him. I'm not now half the distance. I haven't done anything. This is so opposite of saying, I'm going to challenge everything when I hear something. This is the complete 360 turnaround. And this bull will want to come in by the time I'm done. So now I've set the table. There's a bull there. Now I'm going to go ahead, let a little bit of a minute go by again. Keep this natural. Don't get all in hunter mode where you got to be aggressive and tossing and get too carried away. Be like an elk is out there. And so now I'm going to start raking, tickling the branches just enough. I know he can hear me. I can't be too silent or he won't hear me. So I have to be just loud enough and give some foot stomps. I might even kick the tree or stumpage or anything on the ground with the heel of my boot or the tip, whatever it takes to give me a little more noise so I know he can hear it. And so I'm going to go through that little routine of raking. And so he knows that I'm doing something up there. I'm displaying for either myself, for him, or something. And so once I start doing that, I slow down a little bit. And that's when I give him the 3 cow sounds. I give him usually 2 very soft and 1 a little bit more abrasive. And it would be like this. And it's just something like that. That's it. I don't need to give 5 and 6 more or anything like that. All it does is it plants that seed. There's a cow right there. And so now I amp my raking up just a little bit more. And I'm still kind of, settled back a little bit because I know he's going to end up doing something. And I need to be able to build on it. So I don't want to build too much. I want to be able to have still a buildable platform here. So I'm keeping it just enough that he knows I'm talking to this cow. And so now I will start panting after I'm raking and I'm pawing the ground. And I'll give him a few of these little pants, kind of just little stuff like that, just enough for him to hear it. And I keep raking, and I rake a little bit more. And so I may give another little cow sound in there, but I just keep the raking, give a few more pants, and then I will give a glunk, but sometimes not in the same scenario. I'll let that settle down now. I just wait for, maybe 15, 20 seconds, and I repeat it and do it again. But this time I'm going to add a little bit of glunking. This shows this bull. Anytime another bull hears a bull glunk, there's cows present. And she's generally coming into estrus. They don't use it any other time. And you'll hear them kind of give those. And that's all you got to do. Just do maybe 4, 5, 6, little threesome real quick. I mean, this is what bulls will do. Then they'll give a single. The point is you're planting that seed. You're talking to that cow, and he knows it. Now I'm representing that I have a cow coming into heat. After I do this, usually 5 or 6 minutes, it's not uncommon for him to all of a sudden give a short bugle. He's showing interest now. He doesn't always do it, but many, many times the bull will give a bugle, especially if I inject that cow call again. It's like he gives that little short roundup bugle. So you heard the other bugle, right, Cody?
Yep.
Okay, now you're going to hear one with a little bit more emotion. He was giving you that little lethargic bugle. Now you're going to hear the bull do this. Okay, that was nothing like the little. That was nothing like it. So all of a sudden, he's showing a little more emotion. And he did it right after my cow call. He's not doing it after my raking, nothing like that. I gave a few more little cow calls as I'm skirmishing, rustling my feet, raking, and giving a few more pants. Let it die down a little bit. Sometimes I'll just move around and hit brush, not doing anything else. And again, this takes time. You're planting that seed the whole time that you've got this cow with you. And so I'll pick it up again as the bull gets a little more excited, and I'll hit with a few more pants, a little more seriousness with it. And then I'll go ahead and hit that cow call. Now I'm listening for that bull. I want that bull to answer, because as soon as he answers that cow call, I'm going to hit him with 2 or 3 contact buzzes. This is the cow asking the bull to come over to her now. She is now calling him. The bull's not, I'm not me, the bull here. I don't want the bull to come. But many times the cow will. She'll use this sound. And she's showing interest in this bull once he bugles there. And when she shows that interest, many times that bull will respond right back as he gets it. Now you see you're raising his level from that little. Now he already hits you with a little frustrated, I want this cow kind of around him. Now when he answers that cow, I'm coming over the top of him. I'm going to give him this. Okay. I amped it up now from my first little bugle. Now all of a sudden, I'm telling this bull to stay back. I'm giving him a warning. You see, that wasn't at the top, number 10 of calling. Probably number 5, 6 at tops. I showed a little more emotion from my first bugle to my little bit of a second one. Now I'm all of a sudden saying stay back or else. It still leaves me room when he's going to come. Now, once I got him calling, that bull's dead. I might as well notch my tag almost. I'm not kidding you. Because once you got him going, you got the hook in his mouth. He's not going to let up. He's going to keep coming now that this cow invited him. And I keep playing the scenario. And now I'm still talking to the cow. I'm not talking to him. Only when he responds back to us now do I talk to him. So I'm still playing with the cow, getting more restless because she's showing interest in this other bull. This is giving this other bull confidence to come toward us. So now as he starts calling, now I'm hammering over him, usually 2 or 3 times with a little bit more Reiki, and that's all it takes. He's on his way. That's it. You're done. You don't have to go through 15 more cow calls, nothing like that. He's on his way. And you took a situation that gave you a lazy bugle in the bull in the very beginning, and you brought it all the way down to it's a challenging situation now where I'm giving him everything I got at the very end to stay back. And of course, he's not going to. And once he starts piping up, you're like, oh my goodness, that's a bigger bull than I thought from his first sound. And this is what happens. And these bulls will come right into you. And so, but it takes time to develop. But once you start calling bulls in like that, Cody, you will call one after another because you have the confidence that it works. You planted the seed that you have a hot cow. And those are the sounds that a bull will use that shows he has a hot cow in his midst. And this is what excites the other bulls. This is why he's coming over. He wants to scent check this area. He wants to scent check that cow. I mean, and that's what we're doing right there is we paint that picture in their mind's eye.
No, that's so funny. You were telling this story, and I have the exact same scenario that has happened in the past. The only difference was there was an area I wanted to be. I had 1 day left, last day in a season, and I wanted to be a certain area, but it wasn't quite time yet. So I was like, I'm going to hit this spot. Sometimes there's elk down here. And I basically cold called the exact same scenario you were just talking about because it was early. It was still, I think probably 5 in the afternoon. So, I mean, a little bit hot. Bulls weren't up yet. And I probably called for 15 to 20 minutes. And I heard that little, just basically acknowledging that I was there. And I thought it was a spike, to be honest. It was just the smallest little, oh. And I was like, I was like, game on. It's the last day. I'm shooting a spike. and
it was like he yawned.
Yeah, it was like he yawned. And this goes, so I repeat this probably 15 or 20 minutes, just waiting for the bull to show up silent. I do this for probably 3 to 5 minutes and just wait and be on dead lockdown looking for an elk popping through. And slowly he bugled again. And then he started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I was like, okay, this is a good bull. Like, I get it. But there was a creek bottom that separated the two of us. And so I knew he probably wasn't going to cross that creek. And so I basically just shut up, crossed the creek, never said a word. And it turns out he had a bunch of cows over there. And basically when they got up, he was not having any of it because some of the cows were wanting to come over and investigate. So as I cross over there, I had seen some cows coming towards me, and I didn't want to say anything. And finally, he challenged Bugles and let me know right where he was. I screamed right over top of him, and he came flying down the hill, hooked that cow, took her back up, and then I didn't move, didn't say anything, just kept raking and chuckling, letting him know I had crossed the creek, and here he come. And I called that bull in probably 3 or 4 times off of his cows because he'd come in and I wouldn't get a shot, and then he'd go back up, and he just couldn't take anymore, and finally did get a shot. But the exact same scenario. It probably took me at least a half hour of calling before that bull was fired up. And you watched him go from just the slightest even acknowledgement telling me he was in the area to full blown scream, challenge, bugle, him tearing up brush, and just you watch that slowly escalate into that situation. Now, if I just walked over the hill, even located bugle, I guarantee I wouldn't have heard anything. And if I challenged bugle, I probably would have never heard anything. So it takes that level. You got to work it up slowly.
And that's a really good point, because if I go into an area and I'm telling myself, I know there's elk here, and they're not saying anything, I will use it as a cold calling. And so that's a real good point. I'm glad you actually brought that up, because I wasn't thinking of it. But yes, if you know there are elk there, and you're pretty confident whether you saw them or not, or they're just always there, you don't have to have vocal elk to use this. And that is what makes this thing, it's so deadly of a tactic. Because you hear people say, oh, well, I cow call and I bugle. Oh, yeah, I get some. But what they don't get is this is way more than cow calling and bugling. Cow calling and bugling is just that. That's it. It does not say I have a hot cow. But when you add the glunking and you add the pants and you add the raking and you add just all the little guttural things, all moan through it. I am talking to this cow. You are displaying for her. That is what you are doing. And anything they hear out there that resembles that, they know there's a hot cow or one coming in to heat. And this is what attracts them over. And most of the time, if they come sneaking in, they're not all, tensed up. It's just they want to come in and see. They want to come in and see. And that's what they try to do, is they just come slipping in. And most of the time, I can't tell you how many bulls came in, and then they weren't even vocal at all. They just had to see it, though. And it's usually a branch antlered bull that shows before cows or spikes. And that's why I like using it so much, is because if I go to a cold calling sequence, which is dominant cow sounds, it seems like I drag all those unwanted in first. And so I try to avoid that. But for somebody who is just trying to put an elk on the ground, you can't beat cold calling, creative cow calling, stuff like that, where you have a lot of interest and excitement in your calling over a period of time in one spot. It can bring elk over. But branch antler bulls go straight to that breeding sequence. Slow play for a slow play situation. Now, if I had rutting elk and they're really going crazy, yes, I would be more in of the aggressive. I'm not going to set up and go through that whole slow play thing when there are 5 bulls just screaming like crazy in front of me, unless I just wanted to kill one of the satellites. Because that's what's going to show, not the herd bull.
No, and I think that's so important. I think so many people, it's that instant gratification you were talking about earlier. They show up, it's early season, and they locate 3 or 4 times in cow call and nothing answers. So they just keep going. And that early season, it can take a long time to work up a bull, and he could be 100 yards from you. You had no idea. And especially a bull that's 300-400 yards away, he's probably not going to just fire off right away. So it's like that slow play early season, man, it goes a long ways. And you see a lot of guys, I think raking is getting popular again. Raking's always kind of been a thing. And that's just one piece of it that you're talking about. And it's a great piece. That's what happens in early season. You're making those subtle noises, and you're basically creating that curiosity of what's going on. This is just kind of the next level, and I think one better, because you're basically saying, hey, not only is there a bull over here, but there's a hot cow over here. And that's right. A little bit better than just saying, hey, I'm a bull in the area, and basically I'm encroaching on your turf.
Yeah, and the thing is that when you're recognizing the call that you're hearing, if you hear a bugle, and many times we do, and then the one you're representing, realize the emotion that you're putting behind it, because really what it's saying is, this is my state of mind. I'm not saying words to the bull, and I realize that, but sometimes people think we are. We're not saying words, and they're not saying words back to us. What we're doing is just emitting our emotion, just like a dog would show a whine or a plead, or you'll hear a dog just give a woof, woof. Then you hear a dog give a woof. I mean, there's a different sense. Something's going on that one. There's different emotion coming out, and that's what elk are doing, and that's what we're doing. And so when we hear something, it's not that we need to mimic them. You can if you want. I like communicating with them, not mimicking them. And so I will change up. That's why you'll hear me give that cow sound. And sometimes I'll just try to call the bull over with more of a regathering or come on over here sound, because when you say use the contact buzz, that is like giving a challenge bugle. That's what they're doing. That is their level of emotion has risen to the top. When you have a cow call, in other words, let me show you. Here's social. That's all that they're doing right there. They're not doing anything fancy. But if they get a little bit separated and Ma can't find the other cow or the yearling or whatever, you may hear her do this. She get a little bit louder, a little bit longer. You see what I mean? And that's what they're doing if they're not receiving a satisfying response from one sound. And that's all they're doing. They're not just using words. It's like somebody was separated from you out there and you had to raise your voice and you said, Joe, hey, Joe, because he's not answering you. Time has went by, and that's what you're doing. That's what the cows are doing. And this is what bulls can do. They're showing that different emotion for the situation that sits in front of them. And that's why I'm listening to elk. And I can tell what I hear out there. If I hear 2 or 3 bulls going, I'm listening to them. And I can tell what's happening right there by their emotion and how one responds to the other. If they're all about the same level right there, and especially when you're hearing them harassing a herd bull, they're advertising themselves. They're not challenging the bull. You can tell by their sound. They're not up there giving lip ball screams. No, they're not doing any of that. He is, because he's trying to keep them away. He's giving them the ultimate challenge. You better stay back or else. And they're still representing themselves as a possible breeder to the cow that's over there. Because like we've talked before, Cody, is several of those bulls will end up breeding that cow when the herd bull is totally spent. And so they realize that several of them have an opportunity to breed her. And that's what they're all sitting there for. They get it once a month, a year. That's it.
So in that circumstance, when you have, you say you're walking through the woods, or maybe you even locate, or you just happen upon, you got a herd bull, he's basically telling every other satellite to get off, and you got 3 or 4 satellites piping off, and a lot of guys will go down there and they start advertising, bugling, and they're basically just following the herd. I mean, he's got so many problems on his hand that it's not like he's going to come fight you. So I think, what's the best situation, or what's the best go-to for that situation? I mean, you're kind of just making noise unless you have an actual motive. And a lot of guys, that's why they don't even bugle. They just try to slip into a herd and get a shot just by following along. Because a lot of times if you got 3 or 4 bulls bugling, they're basically just going to keep each other talking, or what's your go-to in that situation?
Well, if I'm trying to get to the herd bull, you go, well, if they're going to bugle that much, I'm just going to sneak in and kill them.
Yeah.
Well, what if your target animal is the herd bull? That's your target. How are you going to get past satellites? And, and anything else that's in the way there. And that's the problem that people are, that's what they come across right there. If you want to just kill an elk, all you have to do is get close enough and go straight to the breeding sequence. That's all you got to do. You'll pull those satellites over there so fast. And especially once these elk are where they want to be. I do not use the breeding sequence on moving elk. In other words, going from feeding to bedding, or bedding to feeding, or from water, or wherever they're going. I wait for them to get to their destination. That's where I set up. I am not I'm not real big on trying to call elk when they're in transition. In transition, Cody, means they're on the move.
Yep.
Elk don't like coming back to where they just came from, because you're representing an elk sound. And so your odds are much smaller for success. And so I will dog that group. Hopefully they're vocal enough. If they're not, I will try to keep them vocal enough at a long distance until I know all the sounds are coming from one spot, whether it's coming from me in their response, or they're doing it to other elk. Once they come from one spot, for a few minutes, I know they're where they want to be. They're done. That's where I'm going to go in there and get them. Okay, I need to get those satellites out of my way, right? They're in my way. I want the herd bull. That's it. That's all I want. And in this situation, in this scenario, I want them. So how am I going to clear a path? What am I going to do? I can't throw rocks at them. How many times have you ever bugled a bull, especially early in your career, and you bugled your way into him? and he's up there bugling, you bugle, and every 75 yards you bugle, and the next thing you know, you're within 250, and he's 250. You bugle again, and he's still He keeps moving on you. He won't stay there, so you can go kill him.
Yeah, in my early career, I was the guy chasing those elk across the mountain.
Hey, you want to clear a corridor? Bugle your way in. The herd bull's not going anywhere. He's not running from them 3 bulls there. He's not doing anything. He's staying right there. He's not moving. So one more bull means nothing to him. So as you bugle your way in, it pushes those satellites right out of the way. They will not stay there as you bugle your way. They'll answer you, but they're going to do the same thing they did 20 years ago. They move out of the way. They don't like it. They don't want you walking right into them bugling. And so they move, but the herd bull, he stays right there. All I need to do is get within that 150-yard range enough to move those satellites out of the way, clear the path, and now I can make it to the herd bull and work my magic on whatever it takes that I'm going to now kill that herd bull. So that's what I do when I get into a situation where all I care about is the herd bull, and I try to get, and even cows will move out of the way as you bugle your way to them, and they can't see you. The wind is right, and you're bugling, you're calling your way right into them. They just start separating and moving out of the way. They don't just sit there and let you walk up there and pet them. They're out of there. And the satellites don't run very far. All they do is just move left or right. And and again, I'm hunting timber here usually. I wait for, even if I'm hunting open country, like last year we were hunting Wyoming, we wait for the elk to get in the cover. Then we get in there, and that's when we take care of them. We wait for them to get in the cover. I do not try to call them out of the opening, or I'm not trying to call them 500 yards across an opening or 200 yards. I wait for them to get in the cover. And I'm not calling them back out into it either. I'm going to get in there with them. And that is where my calling will start. And yeah, I know there's guys that say, well, I don't want to call. I want to sneak on them. But we kill so many bulls every single year, and they're all by calling. And that's why I just keep falling on it, because when people think of calling, they think you're bugling everywhere. Well, just listen to my slow play. I did not bugle one time until that bull said something to me. I gave that little lethargic one when I just introduced myself. But other than that, I made no bugles in there until he came into play. And now I'm telling him to stay back. But before that, see, I didn't make any. None. And so think about it. You can be in tight, heavily hunted areas, and that's what we hunt a lot of. And you're using a slow play system where you're using panning. You're using some, you can even use some chuckles if you want. Those work fine. You did it. And yeah, those are fine. And you can use the pants, the gunking, the raking, the cow sounds, and none of that goes anywhere. He hears it, but you're not alerting the entire world with, 3-note bugles that travel a mile away. Not until he says something. Now it's time to raise your emotion, letting him know you don't want him over there, because this is my cow. And I want her right here. I do not want you coming in here and infringing on that. And so I'm really not doing any bugling there. I would if I had to for location purposes, and then that's it. Now I'm going to go to my slow play because of his attitude. It's real low. Now, if I get in an aggressive state, like I need to push the corridor open wider, so I move the satellites on, and now I got a herd bull, totally. Am I going to slow play him and just do that little thing and stay 150, 175 yards back? If I do, I'll never kill him. He'll answer and he'll scream and he'll make all these sounds, but he's not going to come to me. And I already know he's not. So I need either get right in his face and challenge him, and I can, or get in his face and try to challenge and call his cows away. How do I call his cows? Again, it's emotion. The cows are going to choose the more dominant structured sounds, bulls, to breed them. That's what they do. So when another bull comes into a bull's face, again, he's not using words. I'm going to kick your butt. Hey, cows, by the way, I want you coming over here. That's not what he's not saying it in words, but he's doing it through his emotion. So when he gets in there and just unleashing everything he has, he's basically trying to impress the cows and slap the herd bull in the face and tell him he doesn't have a right to keep and breed those cows. And that's basically what he's doing. And so that's what you're doing through the emotion of your sound. Now, if I can cow call and get in 100 yards and that bull, he cow call, when I cow call, he answers me instantly. He's calling me to the group. That's what I'm going to do. I could issue a bugle right there, but I'm not going to. I only do that if I have to. Now, if the cover is there and the wind is there, I cow call my way right to that bull, and I'm going to kill him right there. He's not going anywhere. He's going to stay there anchored waiting for that cow to come that he's asking to come. Now, if I can't because of openings or there's other elk, and now I need to go ahead and force the issue and let him know I'm going to go ahead, I'll wait for him to answer my call, and then I'm going to challenge and scream right over him. And when he does bugle, I'm going to try to hammer right over him again, and maybe even invite him with that contact buzz, trying to pull him over. And when he answers, I'm going to scream over him. I mean, that's all it takes is that little interaction right there. And it's just that play of emotion. I'm not giving him a location bugle. I'm not going, and he's not going to come running to me. So I have to play that game when I'm in very, very close. And you're going to know what pushes his buttons when you're in that close. It's not to say I have to make this one sound every time. Sometimes I hit him with that nervous grunt first. They hate that. When you hit him with that and scream over the top of it, man, that is the absolute ultimate. It's just a butt kicker. That forces him right into you. And especially when you're in that 100-yard or under realm, it's the ultimate thing you can do to him. So see, you're playing that game with him right there, just like a real bull would. And by playing those little things right there, that's how you get your physical appearance. Sometimes you'll get in there, Cody, and you're just going to give a screaming challenge, and he's coming to run you over. You don't need to make any other sound, nothing. Other times, you will play a bull like that, and you get in tight, and you bugle, and he doesn't say a sound, nothing. I don't care what it's like. I mean, he could be in a really aggressive bull. You bugle, nothing. You give him the cow calls, and he just goes, he's off the charts, screaming at you. Bugle, shuts right down again. So what am I going to do? I'm going to stay with what's working with that bull, and I'm going to probably try to go right at him. And if I can't, I'm going to do everything I can to try to call him over to me. He doesn't do anything with the bugles. And you're going to find bulls like that. They're not all that way. But you're going to find the opposite to be true, too. You're going to find where he will not say anything to a cow call. And you're 75 yards from this bull. But you bugle, and he is just coming unglued. So sometimes you got to play that. They don't read those chapters sometimes where I cow call, then I bugle, and you come running in. You have to stay with that bugle. And many times I'll just start walking right at him. I'm crashing, breaking, I'm bugling, screaming, and I just cut in the distance. And he stays right there. Yeah. Sometimes he comes running in once you get too close to him. Yeah. So again, you're playing the situation out. There's nothing that's scripted that says it's always this way or no way. Be willing to adjust as a hunter, whatever the situation calls for.
Hey guys, quick interruption. We've been busting our butts to bring you guys 3 episodes a week of 100% free content to make you all better hunters and get you jacked about hunting. In trade, I need your attention for about 20 seconds. This year, I launched Backcountry Fuel Box, a monthly subscription box for backcountry meals, bars, snacks, goos, and all kinds of great new products that you've probably never even heard of. It's a killer way to test out new options or just save money by stashing each box for this upcoming season. Check it out at backcountryfuelbox.com. Save 10% off when you use code TRO. Go get signed up. Thanks, guys. Is there ever a situation where you may back out of that? You get right there to a herd bull and it just doesn't seem like it's going in. Would you ever back out? And if so, what does that circumstance look like?
The wind. I would back out if the wind was going to give me up. And I could tell it was starting to swirl. Yeah. Oh, I'm backing out right now. No matter how aggressive he is, if the wind gives you away, you have nothing, and they'll leave that area entirely. But you always have a chance with him if you've left him in that frame of mind and he never knew you were there. He just thinks you're another elk. Yeah. He's basically going to stay in that same area, and you can come back and work him, or you can wait till that evening, whatever. It's one thing and a half a dozen of another. But yeah, there are times that you have to back out. And then there's times when that bull will you can't get any closer. Mm-hmm. You're looking up there, I cannot get any closer, and he's only 75 yards, and he's just screaming his head off at every one of my cow calls, especially. That's when I'll retreat. Mm-hmm. I will leave right there. And if there's 2 hunters, he will come in as I leave, and I cow call excitedly, and I'm leaving. You cannot believe how many times that bull will just start advancing because he wants to catch up to her, or at least go where she originally stood, and he wants to smell. He wants to scent check that spot. Mm-hmm. And many, many times we've killed that bull. If it's a lone hunter, you're going to want to run back doing that calling, then slip back as quick as you can, unannounced with no more calling, because that bull will come. Mm-hmm. He will come right over there. He wants to look the area over. He just cannot help it. And so, there's areas, if you consider that a back out, it's not that I'm really leaving, but sometimes I do have to retreat. And we even talked about that. I think there was 3 3 straight years in a row, I had to use that exact thing for my son and they're all 3 were 6-point bulls. And I had to use that where I had to retreat. He would not move. I could not pull him in. He wouldn't do it. And until I retreated, and here he came right on the string. And none of those shots were over 20 yards. It pulled him right in. And so those little things, at times is all it takes, as opposed to, I say, a hunter is being the one that hangs up when he sits there and he calls and calls and calls and calls from that one spot. Sometimes we call the bulls in. Sometimes we got to let the bulls call us in. It's those, you're playing all those little factors when you're out there to see which one's going to give you the best odds to put that guy on the ground.
Oh, that's so true. And that's such great advice, is like understanding the difference between a bull's calling you in and when you're calling in a bull. And you were going back to that, the timing thing and backing out. Sometimes it can be very beneficial in backing out because it gives him that confidence and it gives him another, maybe he was on edge the night before or whatever it may be. I've had those situations where I just wasn't going to make it to the bull until it was too dark. And so I basically just held up and bugled and we just yelled at each other. And then I slowly acted smaller and smaller and smaller. And he just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And his confidence was through the roof. Next morning, I'm right there within striking distance when it cracks daylight, and he was pissed. Like he had to come kick my butt because the night before I just kept taunting him as I was walking out, just getting smaller and smaller. And it really, escalated things for the next day. Whereas who knows what would have happened if I just tried to force it that night. There's a scenario.
That's a good point, man. That's an excellent point. About 7 years ago, I did almost that identical thing. It got too dark when I was messing with this bull. And so I was by myself. And so I came back out and I brought my son in and the next morning. We'll cover your scenario. But I was just going to say, almost identical situation. We came in the very next morning before daylight, and that bull was still in the same spot. We could hear him bugling. And I ended up killing that bull. But the point is yes, backed out because of lack of light, left him excited, got back in, and put him down the very next morning. So, yeah, it worked out perfect because it's very similar to your situation.
Yeah, and another situation I've had is, I've found 2 bulls screaming at each other down in a hole, and there's no way I'm going to make it before it gets dark. But I started working down in there just so I could be a part of that conversation. So the following day, I was there. So whatever happened, one of those bulls was going to get their butt kicked that night. And then I was going to be there. And instead of being this new bull all of a sudden, I was one there last night. And so like for me, I always try to slip in and be a part of that conversation just so they get to know my bugle. And the next day, he's all fired up. He's got confidence through the roof. He kicked that other bull's butt, and man, they're instantly just as hot. Whereas, you don't have to work them up all the way again.
Yeah, no, you like I say, use what's working for that time frame right there.
One of the things I was going to ask you, we were talking and brought a scenario into my mind, and I was kind of curious how you would approach it. Working down a trail and just heard some bulls up bugling, and I had chased this bull before. I knew kind of which bull it was, and so I work up in there, and same thing. There's 2 satellites and this bull, and they're talking so much. There's really no point in me in saying anything. So I slip in real close and was actually able to slip right up to the herd bull, just thick enough. It worked out great, and I'm 65 yards away from a cow and like 40 yards from another cow, and he's right there. He's got to be perfect. And I see movement, super light body. I think it's him. And then I think I'd bugle, but he never even said anything. He didn't act like I didn't exist. And I didn't want to cow call because those cows were too close. And I had slipped up about 10 yards, seen those cows. Anyway, I think it's him about to step out, and I just have to clear 1 tree. So I come to full draw, and I take 2 steps out, and it's a cow. And I'm like, oh crap, not him. And I look over, and he is staring me down like 20 yards behind her, and he's got me pegged. And he just barks and leaves. And like, he didn't know what it was, but he knew it wasn't right. So he kind of barks and takes off and barks again. And the cows are all just staying there. They don't do anything. So I'm like, okay, I back out, and I was like, let's not screw it up. This is a really good bull. So I back out a little bit, and he's kind of on edge. Now, I'm kind of curious what you do in that situation, but I actually ended up waited the next day, come back in there, worked the ridge up, and just trying to locate him. I know he's in the area. He didn't go far. And so just over the backside of that, I find him in a hole. And I'm basically working across, just advertising, bugling, probably 9 in the morning, and I get within, I would say 150 yards, 200 yards of him, and it gives me kind of a little shy bark thing. And I don't remember what I did after that, but basically just kind of mimicked him. I think I started raking a little bit, and then he barks or, does a little half bugle again, and he'd moved off about 100 yards. And I was like, well, odds of killing this bull right now, he's on alert. There's definitely not a hot cow in there. Seems pretty low, so I just backed out. Would you have done something different, or how would you approach that situation?
Yeah, it all depended on how many times I wanted to go back in and fool with that bull. How deep were you? Could you get back in? Was this like, oh man, I got to make something happen right now because I don't want to come. If that was the case, I've had bulls bark at me, and I've killed 2 of them that did that, and I ran right at them. Just as fast as I could run at them and cow calling my way right to him. And this wasn't the same as retreating cow calls or a bull answers and tries to call me to him. Mm-hmm. No, this is just not letting him even think about the situation, because rarely will a bull run from a cow, and rarely will a bull run from another elk barking as he runs at this. How many times have you chased a cow and they're running right at back where the bull was, and you can do that. Oh yeah. So a lot of times, if it's like, I'm not coming back in. I don't want to mess with these elk no more. It's now or never. But I choose cow calling more because it's more of a relaxing thing. It's very believable, and they just don't even think about it. And I've cow called my way running straight at that animal right there, especially if they're giving you that little bit of a little bit of a grunt or a bark or a little bit of apprehension there. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to settle him down real fast and not evaluate the situation. Not that they can reason things out like a human. They cannot. But at the same time, they know that certain things happen in situations that aren't favorable. And so I try to turn that unfavorable into a favorable very quickly. Nothing that takes minutes, seconds, and I'm right there. And like I said, there's been 2 bulls that I can think of right off that I called my way just because everything happened so fast. And I was just bam, bam, bam. I got right in there and killed them because they were just standing there waiting. But so in other words, I didn't set up and try to go through some scenario and pull him back out of a situation that he was not comfortable with. You see, so you're weighing those things. Sometimes you have to adjust your thinking. And yeah, it's a 50-50. I get in there and blow him out of there and never see him again, or I kill him right there. And so, you just never know. But once he started giving you that little half bark like that, something happened. He saw something he didn't like. I don't know what it was, but he was very cautious. And the last thing he was going to do, I don't care how great a caller you are and what sounds you used, he most likely was not going to come right back up and give you a shot opportunity. No way.
Exactly. And especially if it's a bull that has seen you before, and you can get away with a lot as far as a bull seeing you.
That's
if
right.
They smell you, it's game over. But in that circumstance, I knew he'd seen me, but he didn't know what I was or what was going on. And so I knew he had to be close. It wouldn't have gone too far. And that's typically the case. Even like, as we were talking about approaching herds and herd bulls, those satellites, you can bump those things. And if they don't smell you, you're probably okay. They're going to stay right there. They'll just bounce over and they're just so preoccupied. But going back to what you're talking about, I think timing is huge. And I think a lot of guys, it's tough because we sit there and say slow play, slow play, slow play. But sometimes you have to make.
That's not a bull to slow play right there, though. That is not a slow play feature. And that's what you're looking for,
Yeah.
And it's just like what you were saying about that bull right there. What could I have done? I mean, we've been in situations and suggested to others. There was a guy in hunting camp that actually had a similar situation where he bumped this elk a couple of times and he bugled and was so close. I don't know, bugle, cow call, bugle, that little confrontation. And he was very close. And he said this was a big bull, a really good bull. And I told him, we were sitting around the campfire, and I told him this one day. I says, you know what? Instead of going through that scenario, this bull is already being hunted by you and who knows else. And he's a good one, So he's not going to keep falling for these things. They get very, very difficult to call in after the first or second time, whether it's by you or other hunters. And I said, you need to try the cow calling thing. I said, rush him. Next time he calls you with that cow call, go right at him. Do not mess around. None of this 10-minute setup. He's trying to call you to him and you're not coming. Just go right at him. he goes in that very next day and he killed that bull by cow calling his way. He shot this bull at 6 yards. And so this is what I mean. This is where you're changing something up, where this bull could have been called not only by this guy, by 10 other guys, bugling and cow calling. The same old, same old, same old. At first, it was exciting to the herd bull. Then it got old hat, and now he's getting very educated. But this was something different. And boom, he allowed it to happen. And that was the instance that it cost him his life right there. And this was over a 340 bull. And so, I mean, this was a public land, over-the-counter bull. So, these things can happen to these big guys that are being harassed all the time. And the same calling sequences are being used by these various hunters. That bull is literally impossible to call back in with the generic type calling. It just is. He's just tough.
Yeah. And like you said, they get educated. What's your sequence on cow calling your way into a bull?
Rapid. The same thing. And the sequence I use is what the cows use to me. So I figure if it's good enough for the goose, it's good enough for the gander. I mean, really, when I am bugling, and every year it seems like there's this group or a few cows, and sometimes a half a dozen groups over a period of a month, these cows become very vocal when they're accepting an invite or they're interested in another bull. And I've even had cows coming into me from bugling with the bull in tow. I mean, he's just running right behind him, and he's not very happy about it. But here comes these cows, and these cows, they get kind of loud. They're pretty loud, but they're their mews are quick. They're nothing like a social mew. They're more of they sound something similar to this. And that's what they do. And you should see it when there's 6, 7, 8 of them all doing it at one time, and they're running at you. And I mean, these things are just a riot, and they're coming. And I mean, they'll run right to you like 20 yards away and just stop. And they're staring, they're search mode. They're looking everywhere for this bull they heard. So when I have a bull that invites me or calls me over from my cow sounds, and I decide this is my tactic, I'm going right at him. That's the sound I use right there. That is about the tone I use, about the level. You don't have to be perfect. Just sound like a cow, because it can be any age group, and they all have a different little voice as they mature in age or they're young. And so the fact is he's calling it over no matter what. And so when I'm giving that sound, it's very rapid. It doesn't have to be super loud. It may sound loud in the microphone, but it's loud enough for him to hear. And I'm just very repetitive with it. And you notice how fast paced it is. That is the sound I'm using. I'm not hoochie mom in it, or I'm not giving a little social cow call every 3 or 4 seconds. No, it's just rapid fire. And now if I'm starting at 200 yards, I may hesitate and pace him out a little more. But as I close the distance, I get more rapid, but not as high volume. I now tone it down, even though I've speeded up the cow calling, because he's only right there. It's like you talking to somebody, and as you guys are talking and you get closer, you don't go, hey, blah, blah. No, you quiet it down to where you guys are getting closer and you can hear each other. Well, this is what I try to be very natural. And so this is, some of the stuff that I suggest to hunters when you're using elk sounds or elk chatter or communication. Realize the tones you're using, the volume, because I know some people will say, oh, the last thing you want to do there is think like an elk. Well, I'm saying that's the first thing you should be doing. Think like an elk. Be like an elk. That's what you're doing right there. You're trying to imitate the species, so be believable. To me, that's how you start working on those things. You know when to use the right amount of motion, the right amount of a pitch to something. Whether it's an excited situation or a non-excited, you're trying to fit in and be believable. You're selling yourself as one of them.
When you're cow calling your way into a bull like that, how do you know when to stop or when to keep going? Are you aiming for like 100 yards? Because inherently, the problem with a bull calling you into him is that he's going to be able to pick you off. Ideally, you call a bull to you, so you're not moving and you can't see that. How do you get through that complication of moving towards a bull?
My distance is 40 yards. That's what I do.
Really?
And I'm not range finding it. I mean, you're going at a bull and you're just boom, 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 boom. Because you're trying to stay in the cover, and this doesn't mean the cover is in a straight line to the bull. And rarely do I run at a bull more than 200 yards. I have run at a bull starting at roughly 200 yards, but most of them are in probably the 150 yard range, between that 100 and 150. Some have been closer. It all depends, because you can get pinned by a bull to where you're only 60, 70 yards away, sometimes closer, and all of a sudden he saw something and he's not sure, and he hit you with that nervous grunt. Now, if you freeze right there like, oh, crap, you're dead. You are almost not calling that bull out. Your number one action right there, cow call, run right at him. Don't mess around. Don't rethink this. Don't think, I'm going to call him over. Once he gives you that nervous grunt, it's because he's nervous of the situation. He is very nervous. Something's not right. He's tense. So now, take that out of his mind. If you sit there and cow call and don't move, you think he's just going to come running up there to you? No, he's asking for a visual. He wants to now see this possible threat that he thought was a threat. Because you're making cow sounds does not make him pop out of the timber and run up to you so you can poke him with an arrow. No way. It just rarely happens, Cody. So you take the bull by the horns. When you're in that situation, it's like, oh, crap, it's this or nothing right now. This is it. I mean, you got a cow call, just right at him. Just go straight to him, or whatever means is necessary to get to him. If you have to go left and right like you're bouncing off a ping pong table because that's where the cover is, that's what you do. But get on top of him very fast. Don't let him leave the area, because if you let a minute go by and now his little whiny bark is from here, then here, and it's just getting a little further away, you're not going to get that bull. You have to make things happen right that second. And so that is what I would do in that situation. But when I'm cow calling my way to a bull at 150 yards away because he's inviting me, I usually will stop at 40 yards, roughly. If I kind of got him past, I don't see him. I just know he's over there. That's where I heard his last sound. That's where I knock an arrow. So I knock an arrow right there. I don't knock it before that and run around with a sharp broadhead sitting on my bow. So whether I'm using a longbow or a compound, that is exactly what I do. Knock it, and I don't call from that 40-yard mark. I'm done calling. No more. I can pop, break, pop, anything. He thinks it's a cow walking in now. But I do try to go in quiet. I will say that. I try to go in as slippery as I can. But if there is debris and downfall, I don't care. I'm going right at him. And I'm not going to take no 2 minutes to get to him. Once I'm at 40 yards, I know I have to cut that distance pretty quick. Now, if I get through there and all of a sudden I see some head over there and I can see him staring in that direction, but he really can't see him, it's so broken up, and I know he's right there, I sit there and wait him out. Because most of the time he'll start raking, or he'll do something, or he'll pace, and maybe he'll give a little chuckle. He's trying to call you over. When I need him to move, I need him to do something. But in most cases, I can tell you that in all these times I've ever done this, I have never got pinned down to the point where the bull just whirled and ran and took off and I never saw him again. Never. But I don't do it all the time. So this is a technique or a tactic that I use just once in a while as you fall into that so-called predicament. But it's usually something good happens right there, because he's looking for this cow. He hears her milling there. He knows she got to that point. Well, the cows don't just come running in all the time, jumping on your back like a horse. I mean, they just dink and flop around and feed, and so he's used to that. So a lot of times he'll mill around and move, and maybe he'll call her, he'll, like I say, he'll even feed a little, or he'll rake, but he's changing position, and that's giving him the edge I need. So I have to exercise some patience sometimes. Other times I've ran right in, and not even 5 seconds went by and I was already drawing and shooting. So you're playing, everything's different out there. There's just not one thing you key in on and say this is what always happens. Yeah, right. It doesn't. And so you got to use some common sense when you get that close and you can see things and you're reading his body language. You can see him, he's stretching out, he's just doing elk things. He's not even tense. You can see this guy's relaxed. Okay, he's not really nervous about anything. I need him to come this way or this way a little bit, and that's what you're doing. You're evaluating 90 miles an hour at that time and probably not even taking a breath, because you're just so keyed in on that, on that encounter, and you're well within range. It's just a matter of getting the shot opening that you need. So, there's no black and white to say, here's what I do every time. So, you just get in those situations, and if you've been in them multiple times, experience starts coming into play right there. to say, here's what generally happens, or here's my best odds. And so when you're talking with others or sharing things like this on a podcast, you try to share those little things, that here's what's happened in the past with me. Maybe it will help you if you've never been in this situation. But I just start exercising a lot of patience. But in most cases, when I get in that close, something happens within 60 seconds.
Yeah.
It's happening fairly quick. And you need it to, because you need the wind to hold up.
And yeah, that's the thing. The key to elk hunting or calling elk is 100% knowing when to be aggressive and when to be patient. And that's virtually impossible to just tell someone this is when you're patient, this is when you're aggressive. It just has to go with experience and things like that. But man, that is the key. And I've done it the opposite of what should have been done probably more times than not, and consecutively. And I'll be ultra aggressive and be like, man, I need to slow it down and be a little more patient. And the next time I should have been aggressive and I was patient. So, that's one of the difficulties I still struggle with is knowing when to be patient and when to let things kind of work their own course, and when to be ultra aggressive and just get the shot.
Yeah, excellent point. It really is. I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head there. and as the more encounters that the listeners are in, they're going to just see how true this really holds. I mean, there's just nothing there that says, here's what you're doing every time. But this is why I enjoy putting elk on the defense. That's why. Because if I am the one calling the shots, they're the ones making the final move. And that's why they die, because it's not me moving around in their surroundings that they know intimately. I've got them making the last move to my setup. And that's why a slow play type situation, or even an aggressive situation, when I'm in a setup spot and I know that they're coming my way, I'm pulling them in. I know that it's advantage hunter every time. But when I have to go into their bedroom, and I'm not saying I would if the occasion was right, that's what I'll do. But if I can pull them out to the peripheral edge of it, it gives me the edge. That's all there is to it. You put your hunting partner out there 50 yards and you sit there in one spot and don't move, and have your hunting partner, you tell him, I want you to sneak in and I don't want to see you at all. I want you to see how close you can get to me. Do you know, before he even goes 5 feet, I bet you pick something up moving in that timber.
Yeah.
And this is what elk are seeing as you're coming in. They see the same little, that's a flash of, doesn't represent an elk, and this is the things that gets them on edge right there. And so it's so much better to have the elk make that final move. And that's why even in calling situations, I always try to put the elk on the defense, and I will win most of those battles. But if they put me on the defense, meaning the elk is calling the shots and I'm following their lead, I'm in big trouble. I have found that out years ago. If I follow their lead and only respond when they do, I'm in big, big trouble. No way. The ultimate thing is to put them on the defense, having them respond to you, having their actions respond to you. That is when you will start seeing you have way more tags punched by a mile. So, it's just those little things, once again, that I key in on. And again, get that elk to make the last move, because you will win most of those.
I got a question for you, and let's go through another little scenario base. Let's say, it's, I don't know, September 15th, and you've got a bull that locates, sounds fairly aggressive, but he won't move. Basically, he's stuck where he is. How do you change that situation to be from the offensive to the defensive?
I have to go to him, and he basically, if he's aggressive, like you say, he's got cows, and he doesn't want to leave him. You're not going to find a satellite that's aggressive and won't move. It's just really not the case. They have nothing to defend. But if it's in an aggressive state, you're usually dealing with a herd bull right there. So even if I'm wrong, I'm still using the same tactic, whether it was a herd bull or not. Bottom line, nothing's going to change my mind from how I'm going to call. But I'm going to him. There's no question about it. I'm taking the fight or taking my situation right to him. But when you say an aggressive situation, I don't know if when people hear bulls bugling multiple times, they feel that's an aggressive situation. But was he bugling because you were mainly cow calling? Was he bugling because you were mainly bugling? Was he bugling because you were representing a cow and a bull? I mean, I don't know. So see, those things change. And I'm listening to the emotion of his bugle. And it's telling me, how worked up is this bull getting? Or is he just responding back with a location bugle? But if he's getting aggressive and I noticed the change, in his bugle, and he's getting more of a, you see, now he's doing that. I can tell right now this bull's getting really worked up. So if he can actually make that sound calling a cow, he is finally getting to the point he's getting mad because he is not coming to him. She's not coming to him as he asked her 6 or 7 times now, because you keep cow calling, but you're not coming. You're wanting him to do all the work and come to you. Well, he's not going to do it. He is just not going to do it after that period of time, and he's going to know something's wrong. So in that situation, even if it was bull sounds, I'm taking the game to him, all the way to him. I'm not going to try to pull him over to me at all, because he's not going to come, or he would have already made some advances in my direction. And that's how I can tell if a bull usually has cows or if he doesn't have cows. Most satellites will break the distance or cut the distance and start moving your way. And if they're that aggressive in calling, they're usually pretty vocal as they come in. And the herd bull, no, he may pace back and forth up there, but he is telling you to come in. If you're using multiple bugles, then he's telling you to stay away. He's staying in one spot. He's not coming to you. He's not telling you to come over, because you can tell by his bugling, as you said, he was very aggressive. So he's trying to keep you back.
Man, I'm so pumped for season right now. As far as all things being equal, as far as wind, what's your thought on approaching as far as elevation? You higher, lower, equal, how much does that play a role into as you go to that bull?
You just said it. It's the wind.
Yeah.
I call as many bulls in easily. Coming down the mountain, going up the mountain, going to the left, going to the right. It's because I have to play the wind. Mm-hmm. I really don't have a super favorite. If I had a favorite, I would say I call way more bulls back down to me than I ever do going back up. Mm-hmm. And the reason being is because we kill most of our elk, prior to 10:30 in the morning. Most of them are dead by then. And so the thermals are still in my favor. And especially when you're hunting dark timber, steep country, 10 o'clock means nothing. If you're on a north face, the sun doesn't even come close to coming over that thing to almost noon. It's just big high mountains. You see what I'm saying? It's still on the other side. So the thermals hold up for quite some time. But I can't tell you how many bulls. We killed 9 bulls last year. Like the most of them, they come downhill. I called a couple in for my son. They come downhill. They're coming down. It's nothing to bring a bull downhill. But don't think we're just making a couple bugles and cow calls and here they come. Most of these bulls are being slow played. That's how we're killing them. It's. I'm trying to think. Golly, Dave, the last time we actually just bugled, few cow calls, bugle, and bull come running in, I can't even remember. It's been a while. Most of them are slow played and escalated to that point, yes, but that's not how they started. I had to build the momentum, then lay the boom down on them, and then that's how the finale finished out on it. But for the most part, I love pulling them down. Number one, I love pulling them down.
So if you're killing a lot of bulls about 10 a.m., is that kind of your peak time? And if so, like what's the average day for you and your son look like as far as timeline? I know you don't like to chase bulls that are headed up to bed or moving. So a lot of guys will say that 10.
I do. I do that.
You do that. So what's your average day look like?
Of course. Why wouldn't I? Heck yeah, I'll dog a herd real quick. As long as they're vocal. In most cases, we want them vocal enough to give a direction without us having to call to them. That is the primo. I don't want to make any elk sounds until they get to their destination. That's when they die right there. But we are not bugling our way up the mountain with them. You see, very rare does that take place. If we do it because they're not vocal enough and we cannot get a direction because they're just not calling enough, then we will usually, if there's 2 of us, one of us will stay back a couple 100 yards and he will stay that 200 yards from the shooter enough because it doesn't put any pressure on the bull, and the shooter is still probably another 200 to 300 from the bull. So it's not like there's any encroachment, but the guy way back and the bull doesn't feel pressured at 500 yards. Yeah. He doesn't. He'll answer, but if you shut up, he doesn't say anything. You don't know where he went. So sometimes there's that scenario. And once they get to where they're going, if he will answer that caller every time, I'll sneak in silent. I'm not going to call them. I'm just going to keep moving in. If the terrain allows me to, I just hit, my son will keep them vocal or vice versa, and we move in. And we've taken several bulls, doing this. And, between my son and I, we've taken 61 in the last 27 years. So if people hear this and go, well, how many elk are these guys killing? You did this, you did this, you did this. Well, it's quite a few over a period of time. Yeah. But we also, help others in their hunts as well. So there's a lot of elk that do go down. So we do get in a lot of different scenarios there.
Do you find that once a bull gets back to his bed, he's easier to call in, or he's defensive of that terrain?
Much easier.
Is there a time frame for that? I mean, obviously it's a little bit tough to call. And even, I don't know, it just depends. Every situation is different. But, a lot of times, like you said, if you can follow that bull back to his bed, do you find that he's a bit aggressive right there, or still standing? Or is there like a time frame where that bull, once he lays down, he basically starts to cool down and now he's not as hot?
The deciding factor is, does he have a hot cow? That's the deciding factor. And that tells you how I'm going to play that bull. See, again, I don't just say, here's a tactic and I'm going to use this on all herd bulls or all on satellites. It all depends on his frame of mind. If there's no hot cow in that group and I can track that bull and get within 150, 175 yards, in most cases you can, or closer, I will slow play that bull. I will give me 15, 20 minutes and I will convince him I have a hot cow over here. And I'm right next to him. I'm not very far. I just have to walk right over here and scent check this area. That's all he has to do. And when that bull is not defensive like that and he has no hot cow, I have noticed over the years, in most cases, he never makes a sound. He won't bugle me. He'll just come wandering right in there. But he takes him time. And the worst part about it is, if you get to that bedding area and he's already laid down, then more time is needed, because once a bull lays down, you've probably been in this situation yourself, it takes more to get him back on his feet for no reason. He's already relaxed. He's laying down. He doesn't want to just pop up. But if I can get him in their bedding areas and I can hear him milling around in there, I want to call now. I want to keep him on his feet because he's much quicker to come over to me. Once he lays down, he doesn't want to get that big old luggish 800-pound body back up for no reason. Yeah. And so, sometimes you have to wait him out for an hour to 2 hours, which I've even said that on other podcasts. I plant that seed, and then I even act like I'm leaving, and then I come back silent, and I sit right there, and I don't move. So he'll get up in his own due time. Again, this is a bull that doesn't have a hot cow. But if he's got a hot cow, because you're going to know he's got multiple bulls bugling around him, even if it's only two of them. Once I get in tight now, closer than those other satellites, and I present a threatening situation, whether I'm cow calling or I'm lip balling at my highest peak and I'm trying to pull cows from him, I may even use my cow sound, which is, I've been talking about this on the internet. It's one of the things I will go to when a bull does have a hot cow. I'm trying to call the hot cow away as the bull is using cow sounds. And you've probably seen bulls, I don't know if you've ever tried it, but you'll hear a bull when he gets that frustrating mode. Okay, he's bugled, he's advertised, he's crept in, he's now 60, 70 yards away, and the herd bull is right in there, but he's in the thick stuff. You can't get him out. But what I'm trying to do is call that cow out of there. And you'll hear these bulls, and these bulls will kind of go like this. And he'll do that, and he may do it 2 or 3 times right there, and he's giving that. You can tell it's the bull making the sound. I mean, he's giving those couple cow sounds, and it leads right into his little frustration type bugle. I'm not lip balling. I don't need to do any of that. I can build to it. If that herd bull comes unleashed on me, I have a lot of room. I can work my emotion even higher. That's why I stay something like that. But he knows what I'm doing. Am I trying to call him? No, I let off for 2 or 3 cow calls. He knows I'm trying to call that hot cow out of there. So see, that may be something I'm turning to as I get in close, and he comes and he's going to challenge me. I'm going to come right back over the top of him. No cow sounds this time. I'm just going to hammer him. Do you see that? I'm not going to push around. I'm not going to back off. I'm not leaving. And boom, that usually triggers him right there. I mean, you're already right on top of it. You're not 100 yards away. And those are the little things. And Cody, those are the things that have led us, we've killed over 80 herd bulls in 27 years. Those are the little things that we will fall on. So it's not like a challenge bugle or nothing when I'm standing there because it works every time. No, sometimes you can just tell you got to set the table a little more. You got to give them just a little more to bite off him and piss him off. And that's what it takes sometimes. And sometimes, yes, it is just a challenge bugle is all it takes. You can tell this guy's on full tilt. I mean, he is just going ballistic. And you get in there and scream in his face, that's usually all it takes. But sometimes he's just not quite to that point. And so I know I have to just stick a little more thorn into him, and I'm going to try to call that cow away first. And when he calls back, I'm going to let him have it then. And that sometimes is all it takes, or I'll throw a pant in. You see, a pant creates excitement. It shows tremendous excitement for the present situation. So before I give the couple of cow calls, I may just give that and then cow call a couple times and throw out that short bugle. And it shows the excitement I am. I'm not going anywhere. I am all in right here. And this bull knows it. And you see, and so I become a force to be reckoned with. And the bull knows he's going to have to make a physical appearance to get rid of me. And I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep trying to call that cow out of there. But yet, I'm not brave enough that I want to walk right in and fight old Joe, the herd bull. I'm not quite that big, but I'm still interested in that cow, and I am giving it everything I got that it's going to take a physical appearance for him to hook me right out of there. And that's what you're doing. And this is what real elk do. I mean, look at Sounds by the Elk, or you look at the app and and listen to those sounds right there where you're going to hear real bulls giving those cow sounds. And then that little come on over here, or a little short roundup bugle trying to pull them over, and you'll hear a big bull in the back. He's coming unglued. This is what will happen to you in the real elk world when you're in that situation and you use a certain technique or tactic like that. This is why we kill so many bulls, where you're not being cookie cutter stuff out there. We are constantly adjusting and making the sound that's going to push them over the edge. You see, whether it's a slow play or whether it's running at him, cow call, getting in, being aggressive, challenge, using the cow sounds and a roundup. I mean, you see what I mean? We're constantly maneuvering ourselves to fit that encounter. Not one sound fits all. It doesn't work that well. That's why we don't challenge everything. We wait for the right time to use a challenging sound.
That's so true. And it's 100%. What do you think the biggest mistake that new callers, new hunters make?
Oh, I think the biggest mistake is they don't call enough, for one. Number two, they have no idea what type of sounds to use in the right situation. They just know a bugle and a cow call. And, this is aside from I'm not in good shape. I've never been to the area and hunted elk before because, everybody fits into that realm. To me, number one, the reason we are so successful, even as a team, and we don't even hunt together. Very rare do I hunt with one of the other guys. I've hunted with them all several times over the years, but very rare do we hunt with one another. So I don't want people to think, oh, these are five guys, they're always together. No, I'm by myself, or my son's by himself, or it's my son and I, or these guys are by themselves. We are killing these elk on our own. This is not a group thing. We go out in different areas and then we'll recongregate ourselves and discuss what we went through, or do they need help packing, or things like that. So, this is what's going on these over-the-counter hunts. But so to say, what are we doing? We are calling to kill elk. That's all there is to it. We are calling, but we are very good at calling. Doesn't mean we're world-class callers. No, but we're using the right sounds at the right time. And that's the key, because elk will make a lot of different sounds because of their different ages, even though they're saying the same thing. So number one for us, which we did not, realize in the beginning. Yeah, we were spotting stalkers and trying to make everything happen and sneak around the woods like we were deer hunting. Who didn't? We all went through these things. I've tree standed elk, and yeah, that's great too. And you can sit water and wall, but it's just not as fun as calling. But calling is what fills our freezers. So what do new hunters do? They don't call enough, in my opinion. And when they do call, sometimes they overcall because they don't know what they're doing. And so it's the same thing like I've talked before. If you got a new golfer and he has no idea what club to use, he's going to screw up and just have him be a mess out there until he starts taking in some instruction and understanding what each club is there for and the proper distance. Well, once you start understanding the elk sounds like we've discussed today, if a newer hunters will just take this information in and understand where these different sounds fit, and they can. It's a building block thing. It's a process of how to learn to hunt elk properly. And so, aside from being in shape or knowing your country, I want to be able to hunt areas where there are fewer hunters. And even though they're over the counter tags, was what most of us hunt, you can still do this. In other words, if I see camps parked everywhere in this one spot or area, I am not going to go in there and jump in to hunt it no more than I would see 6 boats in a little cove for hunting, for fishing for smallmouth, and jump right in with the 6 boats. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to find my own little area. Maybe I have to find several areas before I have some, good results. It's the same with elk hunting. I'm going to look for areas where elk may get pushed to. So you need to hunt areas where there's elk. You need to hunt areas where there's less hunting pressure, and then learn how to call these elk, learn how to locate them, then learn how to slow play. If everybody knew how to slow play and you tried to slow play every bull, you would have so much more success than trying to challenge every bull or not call at all. But people want to fall on the cow sounds. And so I don't know. It's so hard for me to put on one thing, but I think calling is so important, and it's underrated. Because people that have tried it, it's like I was talking to a guy just today, and he said, we have a no calling rule in our camp, because when we call, no bugling rule, a no bugling rule, because we hunt areas where there's other hunters, and these elk all hear other hunters all the time. So we don't bugle at all. And so that tells me you either need to find a new area, or you need to understand elk sounds a lot better, so that you realize that calling elk isn't all about how loud can I bugle. Because when you start thinking like that, you are way off track. It isn't how loud and how big can I bugle, and I bugle everything. No, it's not like that at all. You're using your bugle like you would binos. You're trying to find them. And once you find them, then you get in there and form your plan. But what do you think, Cody? What do you think is the hardest thing? I'd like to know your opinion. What's the hardest thing for people as a newer hunter?
I think it's a lot of it's patience. I think people, they just don't have the patience it takes. And it goes to area too. I mean, anyone can find an elk when they're all screaming their head off. And inherently, those areas that people can find elk in, or areas that bulls are screaming their head off, tend to get elk pushed. I mean, they get a lot of hunters because they're easy to find, right? And so inherently, you run into these people who are like, bugling doesn't work. You bugle and they all run. Well, it depends on who's bugling and what they're, those bulls become callous to that Primos do-do-do-do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not how it works. And I don't know, maybe it's, that's a pressured area thing, but I don't know how many times I've been out there and just made all kinds of goofy noises. And it was more about the cadence, or more about the emotion that you're leading up to, and having that bull bugle 15 minutes later or 10 minutes later. Yeah, I love it when I pipe off a locate bugle off a ridge and a bull screams in the bottom and he's hot. Like, that just doesn't happen that often. And maybe it used to, maybe back in the day, you blew on a copper flute and then 5 bulls screamed. And, but it seems like these days it just doesn't happen. I think there's more hunting pressure, but you change your tactics a little bit. And, some of these bulls have seen people. And when you go into that situation, assuming that a bull has probably had an encounter with a human, and he probably doesn't want just a bull screaming, walking right up to him, because he's going to assume that's a human, because last time that happened, it was a human. And I don't know, I think people watch movies and they tend to think that's how it's going to be. And granted, it works. Screaming and challenging a bull works, but there's probably a lot that wasn't on that film that led up to that situation. And, maybe they worked that bull up to that point. And so I think that's the thing. It's like, patience is key, but also I think too many people just watch a hunting video and think that guy called that bull in the 1 or 90 seconds of film that was on YouTube. And that's just not how it worked. And maybe that was a 4-hour call-in and you just saw a minute and a half of it. And so I think that's a lot of it. If you had to ask me, because I have hunted areas that get tons of pressure and I've called bulls in, and, maybe I don't know, maybe it's the noises you make, or maybe it's just the cadence. I do really think, though, that it's more about cadence, and timing is so crucial and overlooked by most people.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we're on the same line of thought there. I mean, really, there's really not one thing to put your finger on to say, this is why people are successful and this is why people, aren't. I mean, persistence goes a long way too. I've always felt that if you're just a diehard, I mean, you just don't give up. I mean, you just keep pounding, even if you don't even know much about elk sounds. It's just that you have that persistence, and that too can be a huge plus. But calling, there is just no question about it. Calling is where it's at. And I don't care where you hunt. I hear guys all the time saying, well, if you brought those calls over here, you wouldn't call a bull in. You hear it all the time. And guess what? That's exactly what we hear right here. We hear the same exact thing right here in our locale. And it's true. If you stay with the same type of calling techniques that you're using here, you're going to fail almost anywhere you go. But guys that are successful, you take them and put them anywhere and they will fit in. They will figure out a way how to tailor their calling to this situation, or, hunting areas where maybe the pressure is pushing elk. You got to have some common sense. And I'm not going to sit there and park next to 12 guys that I see the rig sitting there and run around there and throw 10 bugles out in the next 5 minutes. That just doesn't even make sense. Mm-hmm. And so you got to weigh things and you have to figure things out. I've also seen where there was a lot of hunters sitting in a trailhead and nobody even walked off the trail hardly. You could have went a half a mile in any direction and there was like, you were in no man's land. So, those things come into play too. So kind of put yourself in good situations, in good positions, in good places. And sometimes not even the greatest calling in the world has to happen. If you're just trying to kill an elk, here's your best thing. You want to kill an elk. You're a new person out there. I want to go into elk country and all I care about is killing an elk. Number one, learn a cold calling sequence. Number one, but you're going to pull in spikes, cows, raghorns. That's usually what comes first. But with setups near the feeding area, if you can find and locate the feeding areas, anything with fresh sign around them, the meadows, the little parks, the watering areas where they're coming down to feed, if you can set up to about 9:30, 10 o'clock in those areas and use that calling sequence with a good setup, your odds are huge you're going to pull something in. Now, as these elk leave these areas and they're going to head to their bedding area, what you do now is I just step it up a notch. It's really the same thing, but you're using what's called the creative calling sequence. Creative meaning you're using all kinds of different cow sounds. You can even use small bull sounds, but really get into it, and you want to stay there for hours, because that's where the elk are. Once you get to their bedding area, 10 o'clock, they don't even get to move around again until 5 or 6 o'clock. So you have a captive audience sitting there. And I don't care if they're half a mile away, if they're 200 yards away. You sit there and create that environment that there's other elk there because they're a herd animal. That it will eventually pull some of those elk out to come and check you out. But you got to be on the watch, because most of them don't come in talking. They just show up. But you do something like that for 5 straight days, and I guarantee you will have at least a half a dozen times that you will draw your bow. Yep. These elk will show up. They just sneak in. But let it happen. And if people would just do something simple as that, they would be shocked at how well, that things can fall into their favor.
Oh, absolutely. I was going to ask you, if you're, for a new hunter, someone who just wants to kill an elk, would you recommend sitting a wallow or trying to just cold call and some good in areas with good sign?
You can sit a a water source as long as it's active and but when we're talking a new person like you just mentioned, it's so hard for them to find them. You're not going to jump on Google Earth, and you're not going to jump on a map. I don't care how detailed it is, and it's going to say, here's a water hole, here's a water source, and here's a wallow. It's not going to show any of those. It takes a lot of footwork, dancing around, moving through the woods to where you stumble on these things. And if you're a newer elk hunter, you don't even know where to begin. You have no idea. So the fastest way to find them, without a doubt, I don't care if it's September 1st, it makes no difference. The fastest way to find these things in a new area is to go call at night, or an hour and a half before daylight. Go every mile where there's no camps, nobody hunting. so you're not harassing other hunters, and stop and give 3 bugles, 1 a minute. Wait for 3 or 4 minutes. If nothing answers, go a mile, do it again. Go a mile, do it again. Go a mile, do it again. It doesn't matter. You will eventually have an elk respond to you. When an elk, and I mean, I've done this for years, and I have had over 1,000 bulls respond back to me it's just nuts how many will respond back. And so do this. The more remote the area, the more beat up the old dirt road, less people on the better. The more your sound will carry out if you can get into elevated areas and cover well over a mile with your sound. And during the daytime, sometimes it's important to drive these areas to where you can see huge areas that your sound will carry forever. Note those and do them an hour, hour and a half before daylight, all the way past daylight. Call into these areas. Once you locate these elk, you can either go hunt them right then or you can mark it on your map. I usually mark them on my map. I like to find 4 or 5 different ones over a day or 2 period. Mark them. You just found their feeding area. That's where they're at. They're feeding right there. That's where they spend their entire night, get up in the morning and feed and water right there. Mark it. If you can't get up there and hunt them right then and there, let some time go by. Let 10 o'clock go by. Now get up there where you've heard all those elk or one elk or whatever it is. You heard one elk, there's a lot more. They're herd animals. He ain't by himself. Let me tell you, he's not by himself. Now you get up there once they vacated the area. They don't smell you. You're not going to bump anything. And look and see what drew them there. You're going to get over there and you're going to find, oh my God, look at this water. Look at the swampy area. Look at where there's a wallow and there's a wall. You're going to know why they were there. And then what are you going to find? You're going to find the trails coming in them and going out of them. Even though you didn't know nothing about that area to begin with, I don't care how many hours you spent on Google Earth, it's not going to tell you that stuff. So now you find these areas where these elk are bugling early like that. That is the feeding area they're using during your stay. Find that trail. You know you didn't booger them. They left on their own. Come back in there the next morning or that evening. Find the trails that they're coming in and out of to that feeding area. Now sit them a couple 100 yards before they ever get to the feeding area or whatever it takes. The wind's in your favor. Sit those trails. They're going to come back by. You found right where they want to be at that time, not where they're going to be in a week or 2 from now, but they're there right now. So sit those trails and mark those on your map. These elk will use those same feeding areas year after year after year. It's the same with the bedding area. From 10 o'clock on, get in the elevated areas where you can hear forever and sit there for hours, sit there just before dark. Listen, wherever you hear an elk or see an elk at that time, that's their bedding area. Even if they're moving around, you're in the vicinity of where they bed. Again, they stay in those areas every single year. They'll use those same bedding areas. Do it over and over from day to day. Next thing you know, you'll have maps like mine. I have hundreds of bedding areas over various areas that I've marked so I can, when I'm hunting quiet elk and I'm like, okay, they're not saying nothing no matter what I do. I'm going a certain time of day. I'm heading to that feeding area or I'm heading to that bedding area. I'm going to sit on the peripheral and I'm going to call them out of there. And how do I know if they're there or not? I'm checking those trails that go in and out of them. No activity, no sign. I'm not going to sit it. I'm going to go to the next one on my maps until I find, holy cow, look at the tracks. They're not saying anything, but there is so much elk sign on them. Rubs on the trees where the bull's in a group there with him, and he's rubbing, randomly from here to there. And so I know they're in there. So now I'm going to go as close as I can to that bedding area. I can be a half a mile away and pull something out. I'd rather be within a couple 100 yards, but I'm going to set up and try to pull them out of there. I only want a bull. I'm going straight to the slow play breeding sequence. I want any elk, I'm going to a creative calling sequence because I know I'm likely to pull anything out of there, and there's a lot more cows and spikes than there are all branch antler bulls, and I don't care what I kill. So, that's what helps me select what I'm going to use. But if I'm looking for free feeding areas or bedding areas, I find them the fastest way like that without burning a whole lot of boot leather. First thing in the morning, or after 10 o'clock, I sit those high ridges and you wait. Stay there for hours and you'll hear these elk start singing out just little by little, or you provoke them to bugle by bugling yourself just now and then. And just sooner or later, you will hear something sound off somewhere, if you hunt enough days. It just happens.
Oh, yeah. That's, man, you're giving away all the secrets, Paul. But you find elk at night, and a lot of guys will try to go there, the next morning and they're gone. And same thing, if you can kind of work backwards and figure out where those elk are going. Exactly. Okay, this is that timber patch, probably bedded here. probably on a north slope, probably in some dark timber, and then sit across from that. Get to where it's hearing distance, because a lot of guys screw this up. They'll try to bugle from way up high, and those elk are bedded pretty low. You might not even hear them. So, and a lot of times you get that lazy bugle. It's hot. They're not screaming their face off. They're just going to give you a light bugle. Surprise, surprise. You got to work down that canyon to where you're low enough and close enough to be able to hear them. And once you get there, give a couple lazy bugles yourself. I mean, and it could take, again, half hour, slow play that. Pretty soon you'll hear that bull pipe off. You're like, okay, he's about a third of the way down the hill on that timber patch. And you alluded to it before. It's like they're herd animals. They're all sitting right there. And there's probably more than one herd on that area, especially that early season. So then you start, when that thermals are going uphill, you can slip down and play your slow game or get on a finger away from them. But yeah, I mark every elk I hear, just to kind of get an idea, especially a new area. Last year went in a completely new area and took me a couple days, but by that, figured it out. Here's where the elk are. Here's where they're coming from. Here's what they're doing, and was able to basically work into these areas. And once you start getting in there, just like you said, there's trails everywhere. These elk have been in there all summer, and pretty soon those big bulls are going to start coming out of the big canyons. They're going to come find those cows. Yeah, it's just, I mean, I don't want to make it seem cut and dry because there's a lot of variables there, but that's, I mean, huge tip that you just gave on how to find elk in an area.
Yeah, it makes it easier to target them. And if you don't blow them out of there, they just keep coming back and forth. But if you're a runner and gunner, you're probably covering a lot of different areas and country. And so if you do blow something out, it's not the end of the world for you, because you just go to another spot. And that's what we do. We're mainly runner and gunners. And we actually rarely go into the same spot 2 days in a row. And it may even be 4 or 5 miles in. Sometimes it's even further. Sometimes they're only a mile and a half in. And we go in there to work that area. And when we get on elk, or we feel they're there, or we hear a bugle, we're pretty much relentless. We will stay there until we kill that bull that day. And so, but that's our style. If it didn't work and we never killed anything, we would adjust, but we do. And so, we get in there not to babysit them. I will not, no way in the world would I sit there and hunt a bull for 4 or 5 days. No way. No way in the world am I going to sit there and keep going in and out of his area and spreading my scent until I find him to bugle enough or whatever. If I'm going to sit there and watch him from a distance, that's different through glass. Knowing I need him to get a little hotter. I can tell right now he's by himself. He's dinking. He's not doing anything. He's not interested in anything. But then all of a sudden one day there he is bugling and screaming. And now all of a sudden he has a half a dozen cows. That bull's going to die now. Now he's ready. But before that, I might have just pushed him around or nothing really positive happening. And that's just it. You don't know what you're dealing with. Every day is a little different in the elk woods. But as a runner and gunner, you really are looking for the more vocal elk. And again, one bugle's all I want. When I say vocal elk, I don't mean he's bugling at me 10 times. If he does, that's wonderful. That's just a bonus. But a lot of these over-the-counter places we hunt, you really don't hear tons and tons of bugles like you alluded to. Years ago, it was more prevalent, but it has died down some. And I'm sure hunting pressure and wolves and everything hasn't helped things. But you can still peg those elk. You can still hunt them. They'll still call. They're going to call, especially when the cows come into heat. They're not going to shut up. I don't care what the hunting pressure is like. No way will they shut up. And those are the times to be out there because they are the funnest. But outside of that, there's so many little tactics and techniques. If a person would just think, you got a bull bugling by himself and he's bugling over and over from the same spot. Why would you challenge that bull? 9 times out of 10, you just run him off because he's advertising himself. He's just trying to find cows. That's all he's doing. Nothing else. So, in that instance, you're going to give that bull what he wants and raise your odds for success. You're going to have a close encounter. And so you're reading all those little situations, just like if you heard that bull bugle, like you said, and you dropped down and got closer and you got closer. Then he bugled, you gave a bugle. The next thing you know, you both are going back and forth and you're just playing the game. But to go in there right away and he went, "Ooh," and you start challenging, screaming, there's a good chance you're never going to hear from him again. Yep. He's done. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to do that. And you went 3.5 miles to get in there, dropped 1,500 feet down, and then you just blow them out of there because that's all you know. No, you need to use the right club for the right shot right there, and it just takes some common sense. Look at the frame of mind he's in right now. Okay, I understand that. I'm gonna work with where he's at in his frame of mind, and then I will make him climb that ladder of momentum. Oh yeah, you're going to get him to climb that ladder of momentum. You can do whatever. I mean, even if you went into an advertising sequence without no challenges in it, you could definitely still pull that bull right on over, or another bull that he hasn't even said a sound down there. You never know what might show up.
Oh, absolutely. And like you said, there's always more elk than you think.
Oh yeah.
Well, Paul, thank you so much. It's been awesome. I am jacked for hunting season now, so thanks for that. Right around the corner. Where can guys check out more information from you? And we already kind of talked about the app, but where can we follow along or just get more info on all this knowledge you have?
Well, there at Elk Nut Outdoors at the elknut.com. Yeah, we have the DVDs and CDs and the playbook. That kind of it's a little broader than what's on the app. The app is unreal, and it's end up going to have a ton of stuff. And I'm actually adding all this slow play stuff to it right now. So it will be here before hunting season on the app. A lot of different varieties of it. So really look for all these different forms and how we're going about making this slow play work for you as well as for us. And so Elk Nut Outdoors will have, the different, like we say, the different information that will show you a lot of the sounds, the tactics. If you want a little bit more than what you're seeing on the app, like I say, it's a broader range because we can spend more time on a 1-hour DVD on a specific subject, just like the discussion right here. Instead of just some of the meat and potatoes of it, we can actually toss out a little bit more information. So you can see it right there. But yeah, the app is just incredible. Everybody should have that app. They really should.
Download the app because then you can look at it and figure out what the heck happened when you're in the backcountry bouncing your head off a tree because you just screwed up. It's worth it for sure. Awesome app. Thanks again, Paul, so much. Always a pleasure to have you on. I think I get more excited about elk season when I talk to you than anyone else. Today's podcast brought to you by Elk 101's University of Elk Hunting. The University of Elk Hunting is the most in-depth course on elk hunting you can find, and it's all online. Corey Jacobson, 10-time world champion elk caller, has put together the most in-depth, organized breakdown of how to be a successful elk hunter. In addition to not only getting full access for an entire year to the University of Elk Hunting, you also get the app. So you can have all of the course knowledge at the palm of your hand, and it works without service. So when you're out in the woods, can't figure out what happened, you can refer to your University of Elk Hunting app, and it's right there. It's like having hundreds and hundreds of podcasts all organized and structured into one place that you can refer back to and study up on. I highly, highly recommend you invest in your knowledge and your skills. It will pay off tenfold in the long run. Whether you're just getting started in elk hunting or you've been elk hunting for years, I guarantee you will pull information from this course. It is such a wealth of information. Sign up today, use the code TRO30, and you'll save 30% off your membership, which is good for the entire year. Go sign up. I promise it's worth it. Today's Wapiti Wednesday brought to you by Phelps Game Calls. Phelps Game Calls are the best diaphragms out there. Even if you've tried to use diaphragm calls in the past, but you couldn't, give some Phelps amp frames a try, and I promise you they're the easiest calls to learn on. Hands down. Also, the new unrivaled bugle tube is out and it's available. The new tube is much smaller than the old tube. The new tube packs a punch. It's got great volume, great tone for its compact size. In fact, it's only 4.5 ounces and 17.5 inches long. It's ideal for you guys that are packing in and don't need a full-size bat taking up all that room. Actually, I'm going to plan on rocking this tube for the first half of season when I'm packing in Montana, and can't wait. It's for a little tube. It works awesome. It sounds great. You can get it at phelpsgamecalls.com. Head over there, fill up your cart with all kinds of pretty colors of diaphragms. Enter the code TRO, and you'll get free shipping on your entire order. Hey, thanks for tuning in to Wapiti Wednesday. If you guys have questions that either we didn't cover in this episode or you just like to see in future episodes, be sure to drop us a line at info@therichoutdoors.net or be sure to join the Rich Outdoors Insiders group on Facebook for more information, as well as some really cool gear giveaways. Thanks for listening, guys.